has written these verses strictly to measure.
As for those who possess them, he commands and requests, right here at the beginning,
that anyone who has them should burn them, rather than share them with the kind of people who don't know a good story when they hear one.
He does not wish to have his verses circulated among those who prize money more than honor.
or among those who wish to hear everything, but do not care to make a man happy with some reward they might wish to give.
Greedy, nasty, petty people. This world is but a transitory place.
You have so robbed it of all pleasure that there is no play or laughter anymore.
Generosity, tourneying, jousting, wearing lady sleeves and making love have turned into heaping up mounds of dung.
What good does it do one to pile up wealth if no good or honor issues from it?
If a man amasses 1,000 marks, he soon thinks he's got it, and yet he's afraid of losing it.
He doesn't trust his wife anymore.
He doesn't want to spend any of it.
For one missing penny would mar the perfection of those 1,000 marks he lost sleep over.
Before we begin the story for you, we really have to let it all out of it in order to get to the proper frame of mind.
That way, when it's time to tell the tale, there'll be nothing left in me to spoil the telling.
Cursed be the day the strong box was ever forged!
Just as wheat is worth more than weeds.
And falcon more than buzzard, and good wine more than stagnant water.
So honest poverty is of greater worth than 1,000 marks amassed without joy and festivity.
And it's better to be gracious and frank than to be stingy and king of France.
Now I'll return to my tale and to my prologue, for I feel a tremendous urge to begin to tell my story without a lot of fuss and bother. Once upon a time!
Evan was king of England.
He maintained peace in his land.
And with the sole exception of King Arthur, there never was his equal.
He maintained chivalry and sustained young warriors by gifts.
Not empty promises.
For their services, he richly rewarded them every day.
He gave freely and unstintingly of his possessions.
And that is what every wise man should do.
Give and be careful about taking things back.
This King Evan, who ruled over the English, was a very wise man indeed.
He wished all his friends and placed him in positions of great honor.
So that when the hour of greatest need came, they got him out of any trouble.
This is quite clear to King Vagon, who held the realm in Norway.
Between him and the King of England, a war had lasted a very long time.
It began over something trivial.
Then many houses were set on fire.
And cities put to the torch.
And so many feet and haunches sliced.
And so many people wretchedly scattered.
But the country was so devastated.
I can't tell you the half of it.
The damage began to mount up so that Norway was nearly destroyed.
Afflicted with hunger and misery.
Then the wisest of counselors thought of arranging a marriage between Evan and the daughter of King Vagon named Eupheme. The world never held such a beautiful gem. They told the king what they had in mind.
Lords, by God, I'll follow your advice and give him my daughter in exchange for a court and alliance, so that peace may be guaranteed.
When King Evan heard this, he was overjoyed.
This fight was well worth the hard work if I could have this woman to wife. For there is no greater treasure on earth. I want above all to wed her and bed her properly. I have suffered long for love of her.
And may God grant that you get possession of her.
For the girl comes from a very good family.
The king didn't delay.
I'm marrying Eupheme, the Norwegian princess.
No one was opposed to this.
For they thought they would get great relief and respite from war.
At the crack of dawn,
2 archbishops.
And 4 bishops sported the ships.
Together with 2 dukes.
and 4 counts. My lords, what's the use of prolonging the story? The sailors arrived in Norway.
King Vagon invited them at the court, and entrusted his daughter Eupheme to them without further delay.
And just as the wind changed, they returned. They reached the English port.
King Evan omitted none of the niceties when he came to greet his beloved. When he saw her, he greeted her gallantly,
She returned his greeting courteously.
which was most pleasing to the king. The king lingered to kiss her, and then sought to her comfort.
For her heart was a little bitter from the tiring journey across the sea.
The wedding festivities festivities went on for a year. That was the custom in those days.
You lived life to the fullest then. I don't know how much it cost.
More than anyone could imagine.
During the celebrations, a count with twin daughters came to land.
2 counts married the daughters.
Each one claimed to have the older.
But one of the two must have had the younger.
There was a quarrel in the inheritance, for both of them wanted to have the land.
One wanted to share it equally.
The other said he would be a martyr and vile coward in battle before yielding an inch of it.
The case went so far that they set a date for hand-to-hand combat to be judged by the nobles of the country.
The king and his barons did their best to arbitrate and reach an agreement.
But both parties were adamant.
So, negotiations came to nothing.
Each one had the bad luck to be so severely wounded in the fight that they both died trying to prove themselves right.
Oh, great heavens! What a way to lose good men on account of 2 orphan girls! By the faith I owe St. Peter, no woman shall be allowed to inherit again in the kingdom of England as long as I reign over the land.
Everyone swore to uphold the decree.
Some did it in anger.
But most did it quite gladly.
The ones who had nothing to lose.
But as for those who had only daughters and huge holdings to bequeath,
Don't you think their hearts were filled with rancor?
King Evan left Chester and headed for Winchester, traveling there at top speed.
but wait till you hear the amazing thing that happened then while they were passing through the woods.
A great big dragon came whistling through the forest towards them.
They were ambling along, joking and chatting.
When it rushed into the midst of their company and stung them with its tail and grabbed them. It speared for a venom from its mouth that harmed and killed whoever it touched.
King Evan was greatly disconcerted.
The dragon flew around and around and around, and when it had finished its rounds,
It threw forth flames from its nostrils and dried the horses' backs.
After the flames, it breathed clouds of smoke that hid the light from view.
So they could scarcely see a thing.
Now King Evan was really worried.
the dragon killed 30 of his men. But they took a break to eat the dead, gobbling them up.
We shall be disgraced if we return home on such a state. If there is any man among you who dares to battle that dragon and kill him, I will give him a counsel and his choice of any woman in the kingdom. Let him take the one he likes best, except, of course, if she's already pledged.
Nobody dared utter a word.
No matter how much you promise to do, no matter how much you cajoled and wheedled,
Nobody dared boast that he would attack it.
But the king had a young follower, Cador the Brave, an accomplished youth.
He was the bravest knight of all, best loved and most valiant.
He was very much in love with the daughter of Heldris of Cornwall.
Not a woman in the realm was her equal. She was the most beautiful girl in the world, and they called her Euphemie.
God took Cador's spear from him. He would be ready to prove himself immediately.
He contrived to disappear from the king's sight and headed into the woods at once. He made his way towards the dragon very quietly.
and saw the dragon already so stuffed with those half-charred dead men.
That it was already having trouble drinking blood and eating flesh.
Before it caught sight of Cador,
He'd struck it with his lance so that one jaw was torn open.
The dragon struck the horse and disemboweled it,
Cador fell right into the dragon.
who nearly skewered him.
but Cador rallied at once.
He drew his sword, rushed at the dragon, and sliced its spine completely through.
And watered in his blood and prayed and shrieked.
Oh, where is my beloved Cador? Who knows? No one? Nobody at all? Lord, I've had a dreadful day. If I lose Cador on top of everything, that will be the absolute height of misfortune.
Good sir, if I may make so bold to tell you truly, Cador the Brave has gone to seek the dragon, but it's not my fault.
Cador! Cador! Oh, what terrible suffering this feast has caused! I don't know what to do. Alas!
I'm here, your majesty.
The king came there with his man.
And Cador, that handsome
some severed the head of his dragon.
Whoa! The others were very much afraid of the dead beast.
All rejoiced greatly at the dragon's death.
Everyone marveled at the head.
They prepared a great feast for the king and his men.
Cador was given a very warm welcome because of his valiant conduct.
Cador speaks to you.
Who is certainly not his enemy.
She loved him dearly, but he didn't know it.
And if he doesn't ask her of the king now that he has his choice wife,
Won't he look the perfect fool?
He wants to tell without delay.
he's suffering terribly for love.
But he won't do this right away. He still has to suffer a little first.
The king retired, all tired out after he'd eaten and drunk his fill.
And valiant Cador retired too.
His heart afflicted with terrible pain.
It was a little bit before daybreak,
He moaned and groaned and changed color.
because of the venom and the fumes that the fierce beast had spewed at him.
When the king saw Cador lying there all pale and wan, he took and held him in his arms. He beat his breast and wrung his hands.
He suffered so he nearly died.
Send for Euphemie. She's the wisest doctor in all the land. Ah! I will give you a rich gift, my friend, and a fine reward if you can heal him.
I can cure him in 2 weeks, so well that there will be no trace of illness.
Hear me, my people! If she cures my nephew, she can marry any man in the land.
Sworn and witness.
She thanked him for the symptom blow.
The girl had done her work so perfectly that within a week, truly she had cured him of his infirmity. By the grace of our Lord.
But the way she handled and held him when he was sick made love for her grow stronger.
Love laid siege to him more than before.
The more he saw her, the more he wanted to.
And from his desire to see her, his heart grew very bitter.
Alas, is this what comes of love? Such dreadful pain and such bitterness. Love gave me the courage to perform a mighty deed for her. But now, love has made me a coward before you people. I couldn't reveal my love to her.
But the girl might think he just wants her as a mistress.
She saved me from one malady, but a much worse one now poisons me. I can't reveal my love to her. But I don't think it's a good idea to conceal it either.
It's better to be silent.
Love has caused me great distress. I have no hope of being cured.
He was awake all night, suffering, groaning, for love had seized control of him.
Now I want to tell you about the girl who served as his physician.
She came and went often to see how the patient was doing.
If she loved him before, she loved him more now.
No one should be surprised by this. We've seen so many times before how embers and stubble can catch fire without the slightest effort, where there is wind.
Euphemie is driven wild, seeing each day what she desires and being deprived of her desire.
She wants Cador to know that she would have no other lover but him, but she doesn't have the courage to tell him that she's in love with him.
My God, I have cured many a man, but I have been badly repaid by the last one. I caught this disease of love from Cador. This young man is highly contagious. Damn this whole relationship. Damn that dragon, whoever raised him. Damn the cursed venom that made Cador so sick. He gets any woman in the kingdom, damn that too. The king offered me any man, but I can't just ask for Cador. That wouldn't be fair, for he is first throwing the dice. God, what an awful situation. Why did I cure him so fast? I could have kept visiting him.
It was a little before daybreak.
She had no respite from her pain.
She lay naked in her ornate room, and Cador was in the chamber below.
It was still before dawn when the girl made her move. She jumped to her feet, rushed into her lover's room, and said to him,
Ami, speak to me, Ami.
Sweetheart, your lament has filled my heart with great sorrow. If you suffer, I will bear that pain. I will rejoice in your joy. For everything about you fills me with joy. The way you look and walk and talk, it elevates me in every way. I want to devote myself completely to you.
Swear to me by all that's true that this very month you will come to me and take me, beloved, as a reward for my services.
Mademoiselle, the king chose to me land and a wife was my choice. But I wouldn't take the best of the top three in the kingdom if you were denied me, belle Euphemie.
Sir, are you saying this lightly?
No, my heart can never change. For you must help me. I'm still suffering from a new, terrible sickness.
Sir, what are the symptoms of this disease?
Dearest, I am hot and cold at once. I think I am bewitched. I want to eat and yet I can't. When I sleep, I wake up in such pain that I'm nearly perishing.
Dear, sweet friend, we really need some medicine, for we both have the same disease. What is the name of this malady? If you know, don't keep it from me.
Lovely one, I've heard that those who suffer the bitter pangs of love can be healed by a single kiss.
If I can be cured by a kiss, then I'm certainly being cheated if my sweet friend doesn't kiss me.
Each takes the other by the hand.
They are so carried away by this.
They do not prevent themselves from getting out.
This is not a comradely kiss.
But a kiss of such savor that it savors much of courtly love.
A good shepherd seasoned the dish.
There wasn't too much or too little salt, nor did it taste bad to them at all.
For if it had tasted bitter to either of them, they wouldn't have stayed at the table so long.
Beloved, I am your lover. Your own sweet self has vanquished me after a long and mighty battle.
I love you truly, like no one else in the whole world.
Now they're both more eager than ever to demand the reward of the king.
What if he proves false?
What if he breaks his word?
A person deeply in love is filled with doubt and cannot keep things straight.
He doesn't know what he knows. Love's anguish is of no trifling matter.
Now, I must tell you, they are suffering because they found their kiss so well seasoned, neither too much nor too little salt, that they are in agony for fear of missing the next course.
Let's go to the king.
And tell him of our desires.
They can't stop kissing.
Why should I prolong the suspense? The next day they came at a very early hour to ask the king to fulfill his promise.
They did not speak privately.
On the contrary, they were heard by 100 barons who were waiting to attend the king at mass.
I request the reward that you promised, sire, for killing the dragon.
And you shall have it. A county and a wife of high degree. No available woman will reject you if you wish.
This is reasonable, it seems to me.
That's a lot.
Good fortune, too, a king who gives so freely.
And is so liberal with his possessions.
Sire, keep your promise to me for having cured your nephew, about whom you were so distressed. I took great pains with him and saved his life.
My lovely friend, I will never lie to you.
A king must never lie.
You shall have the lord of your choice. Just find me one who is free, whoever it is. Ask him of me.
I ask of you, sire, no more and no less.
Name your choices.
Kador.
Kador, you shall have £1,000 a year and anything under the sun that Euphemie's father, Count Renaud, holds in fee for me.
Now it would be a good idea to explain. This land should have been this lady's, but she no longer has a right to it.
For, as you know, because the counts who killed each other so disgracefully on account of the twin maidens.
Women and girls have lost the right to lay claim to land.
Before tierce was sounded, Belle Euphemie was given away. Valiant Kadar became her fiancé.
Then they were taken to the cathedral.
Where an archbishop married them.
Plenty of abbots and bishops were there.
And dukes and barons and princes.
And the king, who loved and cherished them, had a marvelous nuptial feast arranged.
Only slightly less splendid than his own.
Now the valiant Kador has his beloved.
They didn't have to ask any longer.
They could take their pleasure to their heart's content.
Whoever has long been deprived of what he has most desired, I won't pity him if he doesn't help himself to it.
Kador and Euphemie returned to Cornwall.
Euphemie's father, Count Renaud, made Kador overlord of all.
And there was never any discord between them.
Kador held the count as dear as his own father, and loved the countess like a mother.
But Count Renaud didn't live much longer.
After the feasting and his joy, he lived only a year and a day.
It's the same for all of us. Whatever a man's clever schemes or plots,
Whether he wants to or doesn't deign to.
He has to die, and so do we all.
Strong or weak.
Proud or humble.
and that is what Renaud the Good did.
Kador mourned the count profoundly. Let's not talking of death now. It's not such a good idea to dwell on it.
Let it please God to be mindful of the dead.
From now on, you shall hear a lively tale. We won't have any more fuss or ado.
Of Kador and his offspring begins such a tale of adventures you've never heard of in any book.
It just so happened that it pleased God to have Euphemie conceive a child.
God, in your mercy, make this fruit healthy, and let it ripen as if it were yours. And do not let it be defective from our sin, and let the child have proper limbs. And when Euphemie is delivered of it, let her be healthy, and let the child live.
Amen.
My dear, I am deeply concerned that our child might be female. If God allows her to be born, then King Evan may not allow her to inherit our land and money. because of those two counts and those twin girls.
Dear, sweet sire, God who created and who watches over mankind has decreed that the mother should be happy and the father pleased with any child.
Hear me, sweet friend. Jesus, the pious, true, and good, created Eve from Adam's rib, so that they would be of one mind, as they are made of one substance. Since, my sweet, our flesh is one, let our will be one as well.
Sweet Lord, I will refuse you nothing that your heart desires.
Hear me, sweet friend. When it is time for you to give birth, which will happen in God's time, you shall have only one woman, my cousin, to live with you. Sweet love, whichever you have, male or female, you shall have her announce to me in the presence of all that you have given birth to a fine son. For if we have a daughter, she won't get a single shred of her earthly possessions. We will raise her as a boy, watch her closely and keep her covered up. That way no one will be able to challenge her.
May God see fit to punish me if I do not do this most willingly.
The Countess grew heavy with child.
I was distressed by her discomfort.
The child pressed upon her, kicked her, and jabbed her.
The day of her confinement grew near.
Now you know that I have no special interest in telling how the lady
Suffered torment!
or how her body was.
Contorted in childbirth!
But I will say this, she went to labor and had the baby, no matter how much pain it caused her.
Now, let us turn to the child and clear things up and reveal whether it was a boy or a girl.
My lords, it was a girl. She was the triumph of nature's art.
Nature, who has great powers, came to the child, took hold of it and said,
I have been very sparing with good material, but now I'm quite bored with crude work and vulgarity. Now, I want to take pains with this one. In her, I shall assemble more beauty than can be found in 1,000 of the most beautiful girls in the world. Once in a while, I must show what I can do.
Never, in truth, lived a more beautiful creature in this world.
as near as I can estimate, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the girl.
Except that she's too beautiful.
Nature will never work so well on any mortal being again. Now, I will tell you truly what happens next. The woman who is with the Countess came into the room all smiles and cried in the presence of all the barons.
Rejoice, good Sir Count. Jesus the pious, the true, the good, has granted you a most beautiful son, a fine addition to the family.
Huzzah!
Count Kidder was in a state of tremendous uncertainty, for he didn't know the truth.
With uncertainty, hope was mingled, and with hope, uncertainty.
Huzzah!
Shush! My lady has no need of noise.
Huzzah!
His desire to know the truth took away any feeling of shame which would have kept him from approaching the lady. Child, Ben. Oh.
How are you, dearest love?
There will never be pain too great for me to endure for the sake of your well-being.
I wanted to know how things turned out, whether you gave birth to a boy or a girl.
You have a daughter, the most beautiful creature ever placed in this world by nature.
My dear, I want to disguise her, and make a male of a female. We can't be sure of ever having a son, but if we do have one, by chance, we'll turn this one back into a girl. That way no one can accuse us of treason or felony. We shall call her Silence, after St. Patience, for silence relieves anxiety. May Jesus Christ, through his pleasure, keep her hidden and silent for us, according to his power.
However nature and custom may have felt about it, the child was named Silentius.
There was a seneschal in the land who had been raised with the Countess.
He loved Belle Euphemie more than his own daughter.
He lived in a forest near the sea.
The Count had taken a great liking to him, for he heard many a good thing about him.
And the man was very loyal.
Lady, I will send for him and entrust the child to me.
He'll build a house in the woods, isolated and solitary.
The lady shall be there with the child.
There will be few others in the household.
All sworn to secrecy.
The lady who was to misraise her child was in agreement with the plan, assuring them in the same things in her role as nursemaid.
That everyone would be deceived.
The seneschal took the lady and the child and constructed a charming lodging in the woods near the stake. He installed the lady and the child there.
When nature realized that they had tricked and deceived her by turning her work into the opposite of what she had turned out, you can imagine how disturbed she was. They have insulted me by acting as if the work of nurture were superior to mine. By God, we'll see about that. There is nothing on this earth created by nature that can be disnatured in the long run. Nurture is disguising my creation. I put more beauty into her than can be found in 1,000. And now they have made a male heir of her who'll go out in the wind and the scorching sun as if she is of crude, workmanship. If I don't unmask her in the long run, Nurture's power will be proven stronger than mine. Nature mourned and grieved.
She scolded and shook with anger.
She was furious with Nurture.
But it didn't help a bit when the child was of an age to wear clothing.
In order to deny her nature, they took care to dress her in male clothing made to her measure,
They taught him measures of good conduct.
to honor both great and humble.
They taught and instructed him so well that Silence was most beautiful of all.
He was more valiant and noble than all the others put together.
In order to build up his endurance and teach him to ride.
The seneschal took him through the streams and woods, which were plentiful in the countryside,
Took him out often in the scorching heat.
in order to make a man out of him.
He was so used to men's usage and had so denied women's ways that little was lacking for him to be a man.
For whatever one could see, was certainly male.
There's more than this that meets the eye. He's a she beneath the clothes.
By the time he was in his 12th year, none was his master anymore.
They practiced wrestling, jousting, or skirmishing. He alone made all his peers tremble. Silence was deeply disturbed by this, for her consciousness told her she was practicing deception by doing this.
In her 12th year, Nature appeared, grumbling and complaining and blaming her. This is a fine state of affairs. You, conducting yourself like a man, running about in the wind and the scorching sun, when I used a special mold for you. 1,000 people lost out because I stuffed all of their beauty into you. And there are 1,000 women in this world who are madly in love with you because of the beauty they see in you.
They probably think I've got some equipment that isn't there.
And all of the women who love you now,
Might hate me with all their hearts if they knew what I really was.
you have no business going off into the forest.
So, no more hunting, jousting, shooting off arrows.
Desist from all of this. Go to a chamber and learn to sew.
You are not Silentius.
Not Silentius. Who am I then? Silentius is my name. I think, or I'm other than who I was.
But then Nurture arrived on the scene and saw that he was talking to Nature.
Hey! What are you doing here?
But nature is helping fix my unnatural behavior. No woman of my lineage ever behaved in such a way, nor will I do so any longer. I will keep to woman's ways. I won't cut my hair short or live like a boy with bow and quiver.
Nature, leave my nursery alone. I'll put a curse on you. Be gone in disgrace.
I've never heard of this happening to anyone. Whenever I happen to get undressed, I'm afraid my sex will be discovered. I'll put all this behind me and live very quietly from now on. The good Lord who created me will be my shepherd and my guide. Was any female ever so tormented or deceived by such vile fraud as I have been out of greed, just to inherit land and money? I certainly haven't heard of one.
Now silence. I've done a very good job of turning a noble child such as yourself into a defective male. Nature, I'm undoing all of your work. No reason you get over here and do your thing.
Believe what I say, friend Silence, and fortify your heart. For if you are true to your nature and live as a woman, you will not train for knighthood. You will lose your horse and chariot, and if King Evan finds out, you get nothing.
Reason stayed with him so long and admonished him so severely.
That Silence understood very well. He had listened to bad advice ever to think of doing away with his good old ways to take up female habits,
Then he began to consider the pastimes of a woman's chamber.
which he had often heard about, and weighed in his heart of hearts all female customs against his current way of life, and saw, in short,
That a man's life is much better than that of a woman's?
why trade a man's life for the pastimes of a woman's chamber? Now I'm honored and valiant. No, I'm not. Upon my word, I'm a disgrace if I want to be a woman. I've a mouth too hard for kisses and arms too rough for embraces. One could easily make a fool of me in any game played under the covers, for I'm a young man, not a girl. I don't want to lose my high position. I don't want to exchange it for a lesser, and I don't want to prove my father a liar. I'd rather God strike me dead, whatever nature may do. I'll never betray a secret.
Have you ever heard of such forbearance as we see in Silence?
I'm not saying that he didn't go through periods of hesitation and inner conflict.
The human heart takes a great deal.
Turns to deep thoughts it harbors over and over again.
Far too often.
And causes itself a great deal of grief.
Silence's heart was divided against itself.
Now, the manuscript tells us that there were 2 minstrels in the land.
The best you ever heard of. Thank you very much. They made a tour of England. Thank you very much.
And we're very successful there.
Thank you very much.
They went to Cornwall and were well received by Count Paynor.
Thank you.
After a week, they head for the coast.
For they wanted to cross over to Brittany.
Nightfall surprised them in a stretch of open country next to a huge forest near where Silence and the Seneschal lived.
Fog was so thick, they could hardly see. As the forest grew denser,
They spied Silence's lodge. Who's in there?
the
People inside. Who are you and what do you want?
open up, and we'll let you know.
We are minstrels.
Is there anyone inside who might offer us shelter for the night?
Yes, friends, there is!
After the minstrels had finished their meal, they were quick to practice their trade. They played such sweet melodies that there wasn't a one who did say,
Surely God's brought them here.
"Thank you much."
We wish him well guided them to us.
Thank you.
But after 2 nights have passed, they will play a very different tune. Believe me.
After they'd played a great deal, they were exhausted from the day's ride.
Silence was there to help them undress, seeing to their bed covers. He accomplished these tasks most charmingly. He brought each of them a pillow.
They were amazed that a child of such tender years and noble bearing was so accomplished at serving.
Ah, friend. Whoever you are no villain and no fool. Thank you very much.
May God who made you keep you safe.
Lords, and may God bless you.
Then, Silence went to bed. But he didn't sleep a wink all night. His heart said,
Hey, Silence. Those clothes you're wearing and that sunburnt face of yours, if you believe that you're a boy.
What that boy has under his clothes has nothing to do with being male.
If King Evan died today or tomorrow, women could inherit again, except that you know nothing of women's arts.
I need to learn something that will serve me in good stead, for who knows the future.
What if you try and become a knight with our tower?
Women can't bear arms.
What if you go abroad and acquire some experience and gain some expertise?
I should go with these minstrels.
If you serve them well and work hard, you will learn to play instruments.
If I am slow to chivalry, minstrelsy will be of use to me.
Silence equips himself well and saddles his beautiful hunter.
Then he stained and disguised his face with an herb he found in the woods. Whoever looked at his complexion would certainly think him of low station.
The ship loaded free, then he went on aboard. The minstrels arrived immediately after, paid their passage, and boarded the ship.
The sailors weighed anchor, hoisted their sails and left.
They were on their way to Brittany.
Good Lord, is that he? Heavens no, certainly not. This boy has a very bad complexion compared to the other.
So help me God, that is our valet from last night. He serves exactly the same way, even though he looks completely different.
Indeed, it's strange. The boy last night had a very rosy complexion, while this one's all yellowish, as if it had been stained with nettles or wine dregs.
Gentlemen, what's all this talk of someone who served you so well last night? If I have neglected anything, I will do better next time. I'm still very young. If you deign to teach me something, I will learn it with all goodwill.
He smiled and they looked closely at him and realized they had been deceived.
It is you! You must travel with us, and we will instruct you in our noble art.
But let us return, good lords and ladies, to Cornwall, Silence's recent home.
The Seneschal was used to Silence going off hunting, so he didn't think anything of it.
Until it began to go dark.
And then he began to worry.
And when the youth didn't return,
He knew the minstrels had robbed him as a young lord.
Then you can see tears shed.
And pulling and tearing of hair.
and the wringing of hands and beating of breasts,
Ladies and girls wept loudly.
They wrenched the rings from off of their fingers, full of the ringing that they did.
That's the least of it, for the seneschal and the lady who had Grace Silence fainted.
And that caused great consternation.
And when they recovered from their swoon,
They sent 100 men throughout the land to find Silence and bring him back.
And when Cador, Silence's father, heard the news, and Euphemia, his mother,
Their hearts were filled with such anguish.
that no one could possibly describe it.
They kept on fainting
And being revived.
and fainting.
And being revived.
And the nobles who came to their assistance.
We're scarcely able to keep from fainting themselves.
Silence! Our beautiful son!
What dreadful suffering you've caused us.
He was the mirror of the world.
The best thing for us to do would be to drown ourselves at the bottom of the sea. Drown and end our lives.
When we are afflicted with such terrible suffering, ending our lives would be the lesser evil.
Our joy went down to the sea.
We have no fear of anything worse, no hope for anything better.
Last night we lost both fear and hope.
Cador knew that minstrels had taken the mirror of the world.
And for this crime, he had all minstrels banished from his lands. Any who were captured would be burned or hanged. Any who could have captured one, but let him escape, would suffer the same fate that the minstrel would have.
I don't care what anyone says. Those minstrels were not on the blame, did not know that he was the Count's son.
And if we can believe the story so well,
Before the end of the 3rd year, he had completely surpassed his masters and earned a great deal of money for them.
they were so humiliated by this, they didn't know what to do.
And because he found much greater favor in court than they ever had,
They were afraid the youth might change his mind and not want to stay with them any longer.
And don't you think their hearts are just filled with rage?
Can't you imagine how deeply ashamed they felt when in the presence of king or count?
he was asked to play harp or viol as much as he pleased.
And they were silenced?
So people could hear him.
Silence was already so handsome, he was clearly no servant, but a young man of quality.
It was already his 4th year that he had served these masters. He changed his name to an even stranger one.
In public, he called himself Malduit, because he thought himself very badly brought up.
And very badly educated in regard to his nature.
And also to conceal his identity.
He gave the very best of service, and still exerted himself in every way to do the minstrel's bidding. He still waited on them with great care, serving them and taking their boots off.
As Silence became more and more admirable, his masters became more and more deceitful. He doesn't even have 4 years experience, and he's outdone us like this.
He's about as welcome as a toothache, and he's likely to continue giving us trouble.
It's like the dog that beats the leg of the man that feeds it.
It's like the one who cuts the stick that beats him.
We've created a master out of our servant.
And he's going to continue doing this because he's got all our knowledge.
He's become so popular that he will rob us of all future profits.
What can we do? If by one bad deed a man can avert 500, old friend, should he refrain from it?
Not at all, dear friend. It stands to reason.
Then let's kill this vile boy. We'll have nothing but trouble as long as he lives.
Friend, our thoughts and wishes are the same.
Our route takes us through a forest.
If that's it, we'll pretend to get lost. And when we find a likely spot,
We'll play a nasty trick on him.
thus, they plotted the whole thing. They were so inspired by the devil, who kept urging them to do this wicked deed, that pity seemed hard to them, and mercy bitter and sour. The more they hated the youth,
The more they pretended to be nice.
that night, Silence dreamt that wild dogs wanted to tear him apart.
He awoke from his dream in such a terrible state that he slept no more that night.
As for the minstrels, they were tormented and feverish from their evil thoughts.
You can imagine how weary all 3 of them were from being unable to sleep that night.
The 2 because of the evil they were planning. And the 3rd because of the evil he feared.
I'll strike the first blow. That'll increase my share of the money.
Take it easy, comrade. We'll share the sin and the earnings equally. But for now, let's tell him to get ready.
Silence was listening, and he heard them.
There was now no doubt in his mind that these 2 desperados would, if given half the chance, make his dream of the 2 dogs come true.
Get up! Little do you know what a hard journey you have to make.
A hard journey is dreadful indeed, and he richly deserves his evil fate who deliberately puts himself at a disadvantage.
The road is difficult. It's going to be a long and strenuous day's travel.
Gentlemen, before I make a move, you must tell me where you are going. For you could be headed for some place where someone might do me a bad turn if they happen to catch me before I can escape.
Friend, don't worry. When you say you feel threatened, we too are afraid you might be in danger.
If the criminals are on the left, we'll take the path to the right. And if they want to attack us, we'll all be here to help each other out.
If they strike, we strike too.
Oh, I know very well. You only be too happy to strike. You know very well indeed I would encounter my enemies whether I went with you to Spain, or France, or Auvergne, or Germany. I'm staying here, and you go off, like upright and honest men. You have done much for me, and you would have done more if you could have. I haven't been able to do quite enough for you.
The minstrels were undone.
Dear friend, good sir, take your share.
And so, Silent took 100 marks as his portion, left the minstrels more than 100, and they went off in a hurry.
With his 100 marks, he easily made arrangements.
Silence took leave of France and was on his way to England. Silence crossed the English Channel and made way to his own lands as quickly as possible. He immediately went to the best inn he could find.
The innkeeper came out and greeted him most cordially.
But then saw at once what he had with him, his instruments.
Holy Mary! What trouble and sorrow I give from a guest like you, my friend.
Good sir, are you sane or crazy?
Friend, the thought is yours as well. A few years ago, some minstrels kidnapped Count Cador's only son. For this reason, all minstrels have been banished from this land. Whoever catches one of them must hand him over or be hanged himself. But don't fix about that now. You are reprieve until tomorrow.
Well then, I won't. God help me, a night's delay is well worth 100 marks. Now then, let's enjoy our life. No matter how long, it's always too short.
Silence equipped his harp and viol and sang beautifully as he played.
Everyone from all around came running to the inn.
For they hadn't heard a song or even a note since the child had been kidnapped.
Alas, my love, you do me wrong to cast me off discourteously. For I have loved you well and long, delighting in your company. Green sleeves was
Why should I prolong the suspense? The next day, the youth was taken to the Count.
Mercy, sire. If I lose my life here, you won't have gained any great advantage, or be at all the richer for it.
Count Cador hurt him inside deeply. He felt such pangs of grief that he could barely utter a word.
A certain old man came and looked into the youth and saw what he was up to.
That is your son, Silence! He's learned the minstrel's art!
Traitor! You're lying! I think you're completely mad. You picked a bad time to start babbling.
It's a dreadful thing to be poor. I would have done better to keep silent. In every court, people listen to a wealthy ignoramus more than a poor but learned man. What's your name, boy?
Sir, I won't try to hide it. I call myself Maldui.
I know very well what your name means. Badly brought up. Suits you well. For neither you nor your family wins any praise or prizes for such a counterfeit upbringing. But what does it matter? You'll be all the wiser now for having endured greater hardships. For one cannot learn everything one needs to know by staying in court. Sire, I know now that I was mistaken. That is not he. But I have heard that he can tell you some wonderful news if you and he are willing. He knows the truth about your son, and we can clear that matter up for you.
Will he, by God?
Yes, by God who created this world.
Sir, might you know where my only son Silence is living?
He asks for his son while holding him.
He wants to have him and can't see he's there.
Now he examines the boy's face closely.
The more he looks at it, the dearer it is to him.
My God, it's you!
But an instant later,
I swear it's not.
He weeps because he doesn't have his son.
Sire, your son begs you to have pity on him. Dear father, you have endured dreadful suffering on my account. You know my nature very well. I'm like an inferior piece of cloth powdered with chalk that looks good but isn't. I have only the clothing, bearing, and complexion that belong to a man.
Oh, Silence! Bursting with joy, he kissed him so many times I lost count of the number, overwhelmed by such profusion.
Sir, I am your harper. For my services grant me from this moment on all minstrels may enter your land in peace, for they are wrongfully banished. I was never kidnapped by them.
I should be delighted to acquit them for love of you.
huzzah! The whole country was glad that Silence had come home. When the news reached the king, he was delighted.
King Evan chose him as retainer to be part of his household.
Cador took his son by the hand and kissed his face.
And prayed fervently that he would make a good job of it.
And conceal his identity well.
So Silence stayed on as the king's attendant and served him well in various capacities.
The queen was much taken with the youth because of his beauty and demeanor.
Now you shall hear what treachery and evil deeds transpired.
What deceitful madness and burning lust lurked in the heart of this female saint.
Tristan never suffered such anguish yearning for Isolde, nor Lady Isolde for Lord Tristan, as did Queen Eupheme for this young man.
Who was a girl.
One day, the king went to the forest, accompanied by some of his men.
Eupheme, who was highly skilled in such matters, pretended to be indisposed and had Silence stay behind.
Her heart and body consumed with lust for him.
She summoned Silence for carved and gilded bedchamber.
And all day she complained.
Pretended that she couldn't eat, that she couldn't stand the least bit of noise.
Or bear to have anyone come near her.
Except the harper. She said he would relieve her distress.
She'll have no relief from him beyond a kiss, believe me.
And she'll be more upset when she goes after the rest of them and doesn't get it.
Now just relax. Kiss me, don't be shy. I'll give you 2 kisses for 1. Don't you think that's an amazing rate of exchange?
Yes,
said the youth.
Who was a girl?
Who was a girl?
So kiss me.
Right on her forehead, just below her wimple. Silence gave her 1 chaste kiss.
you can be very sure he had no intention of kissing her the way she wanted.
The lady, who did not care to be kissed in this manner,
Gave him 3 long kisses, exceedingly passionate and very skillful.
My God, are you running away? Don't you like the rate of exchange?
Oh, yes, my queen, I am delighted with it, but let's call it quits.
Quits? Whatever for? Was any man of your lineage, however exalted, ever offered such a glorious gift?
Her skin was as white as fresh fallen snow.
She wasn't old enough yet to have to worry about wrinkles.
She was round and smooth and soft.
Take a look at these arms, and look at these curves.
Lady, for the love of God, stop. For God's sake, have mercy on me. If I commit an act of treachery here, I would be so dishonored by it that I'd be one of the worst men in the world. Who could ever absolve me of such a sin?
Absolve you? My God. Are you telling me you want to be a monk or a hermit? Go tell your father and your mother you're going to take vows. You'd make a terrific abbot.
My queen, now you're making fun of me.
No, I'm not. If you're normal. Be a man. It's much better to romp in here than to let your body go to waste in some forest.
Then she began to embrace him, but he wasn't at all interested.
Because his nature kept him from responding.
Lady, calm down.
Are you afraid of being here alone with me? I'm not a wild beast. I will bite you. God, what churlish behavior. I have made you my equal. And besides, you love me. Don't be afraid.
The lady was expending all this effort for nothing.
Because the youth, who is a girl, could not reveal the truth about her nature.
Because he would lose his inheritance.
Are you trying to jack up the price? You certainly do a very good imitation of a cheap, vulgar tradesman. I only did it to test you. I certainly would be annoyed if I had been serious about it. May God curse you, because you wouldn't have hesitated to do it if I had really wanted you to.
The lady would now scheme and plot against the youth.
May God confound her.
Before, she loved him more than anything.
Now she hated him beyond measure.
A woman never agrees in changing her feelings like this.
It is easy for her to hate the man she loves most, whether or not she has reason to.
Her love is not steadfast, it's irrational and unstable.
When a woman is dominated by anger, she is completely out of control.
The lady was thinking very hard about ways to harm this youth.
She wouldn't care if you were hanged. In fact, she'd like that.
If he were interested in women, then nothing could have prevented him from taking his pleasure with me just now. In fact, I'm sure he's a sodomite. When I showed him my gorgeous body, he said, "Oh God, stop that!" Isn't that proof enough that he has nothing but contempt for women? He didn't reject me because of his loyalty to the king. He did it because he has something else on his mind. He likes young men a lot. I will see that he is totally disgraced.
Then, to the sound of long notes on the horn, the king returned from the hunt. That evening, the whole court made merry.
Except for the queen.
And the youth, who was a girl.
Silence held out from entering the bedchamber for 5 months.
You fiend didn't take this lightly at all.
One day, she saw her opportunity.
Silence. Do you remember when I joked with you in my bedroom and begged you to make love to me, and you made such a fuss about it? Do you want to know why I did it? The king, my lord, had asked me to test the most loyal youth and report back to him. So help me God, I didn't know what to say to him. It seemed obvious to me that you were more trustworthy than any other youth in this kingdom. I honestly don't know why my lord king made this request. Perhaps a great reward awaits you.
Lady, it was a test and nothing more.
That's all there was to it. So help me God.
The youth thanked her and bowed deeply.
Now the queen will have ample opportunity, for Silence will once again serve her, attend her, and enter the bedroom the way he used to.
The king had gone off hunting.
And Silence had gone down the steps with the queen into the master bedroom.
Right away, she locked the door securely.
Now where do you think you're going?
Out, lady.
Not just yet. Why are you spoiling things for us? Now I command you to take my matchless body. Let's make love!
My queen, I will do no such thing. By the fidelity I owe you, the king will not be dishonored by me. No, no, by God in heaven.
Is that your final word?
Yes, by the God who created me.
And prompted by the devil, she began to tear at her hair.
She gave herself a punch in the nose so that she was covered with blood.
She shed tears, but without making noise or crying, because she wanted to keep this up until the king returned from the hunt.
You crazy bastard! The king doesn't like to share his wife with the likes of you. I'll have you skinned alive for trying to rape me, God willing, as soon as the king himself arrives and gives me the right to deal with you.
Open up! Is anyone there?
Dear sweet lord, there's someone inside who needs you terribly, and one who would give a full measure of fine gold coins to be elsewhere.
My dear, who did this to you?
Silence did this, sire. He did it. He was mad with lust. He thought he'd found a loose woman to suit him. Dear Lord, take your vengeance on this man immediately and don't wait for a trial.
The queen was kneeling at the king's feet and weeping and crying.
She wanted to trick him with her tears into thinking she was innocent.
For a woman always cries as a strategy wanting to accomplish something deceitful.
Silence didn't know what on earth to do. He was almost dead with grief.
But the king was a wise and moderate fellow at heart.
One who knew very well how to choose the lesser of two evils. He saw that if he didn't take vengeance,
His reputation for justice would be undermined.
but it seemed worse to dishonor this youth because he himself would also be dishonored if he should spread the news about this shameful deed.
That nobody knew about yet.
A man must not destroy himself merely to avenge an injury done him.
He considered all this very carefully. He had the youth removed from the room.
Trust me, darling, we'll work something out.
What about hanging him?
Yes, well, that won't be his punishment.
Well, then what, sire? Burn him? Have him torn apart by wild horses?
No, dearest. One must do a lot of things one doesn't want to. Now, this youth comes from a very good family, and is the son of an important man. And you know if I have him burned or hanged, people will not only think I found him with you in the bedroom, but caught him in the act as well. Damn it all! The more you stir this kind of mess up, the more it sticks. So let's pretend it didn't happen. Think of it as a dream, sweetheart. Nothing happened, nothing's wrong, nothing should come of it.
The lady was furious at this.
But she didn't dare to contradict him.
You have received an injury. And I, an even greater one. But listen, I will send Silence to the King of France with a letter, since I am his loyal subject and he is pledged to me. Once he has my letter read, then, dearest, you shall have your revenge.
The king told her a tremendous lie in order to get Silence out of her clutches.
But it didn't do him a bit of good. The queen was cunning as a vixen by nature and extremely shrewd.
She would send a letter of her own that would cause the youth a great deal of trouble, if she could see to it that hers was the one he carried to France.
My sweet sister, take heart and cheer up.
Dear lord and master, I'll be happy to.
Then the king went to the chancellor, and this is what he said to him.
My friend, write me a letter at once. First convey 500 greetings to my lord, the King of France. Ask that he welcome Silence to court, knight him at his discretion at the appropriate time and place, and keep the youth with him until I ask for him. And then he should return.
In the privacy of her bedchamber, the queen had written a different kind of letter.
In the name of her lord, King Evan, telling the King of France to behead the bearer of this message, for the disgrace he had brought onto the king was too shameful to commit to writing. The king didn't dare to have him executed because he was from a prominent family.
Then she folded the letter, concealed it in her hand, and took it to the chancellor that King Evan's letter at the ready.
Friend, what's that?
My lady, I shall tell you. The king is sending Silence to France to be a part of the royal household and to be schooled in courtly behavior.
I shall be sorry to see him go.
Indeed, so shall I, my lady.
I think it's all a joke.
No, my queen, it's not. He's going to take this letter.
My friend, I bet he's not. I don't believe he's going to leave like that.
See for yourself.
And then the queen gave back the false letter, and Silence went directly to France, carrying his doom.
He arrived at court straight away and made a most charming appearance before the king.
Sire, may God enthroned in majesty, who always has been and always will be and holds the whole world in his hands, save you. This is the fervent wish of King Evan.
And may God grant him happiness, my friend.
Silence took out a sealed letter and presented it to the king,
Who broke the wax and asked that the letter read immediately. The chancellor quickly skimmed the letter from top to bottom, and when he saw that it condemned the youth to death, he was so stricken with grief, he nearly died. Friend, brother, why don't you tell me who your father is?
Sire, as God is my witness, Count Heldris of Cornwall.
The king then embraced him and kissed him so heartily, he nearly forgot the letter.
He so enjoyed speaking with him and hearing news of King Evan, whom he asked about. After a while, he ordered the chancellor to have him the letter read. I see this, sire. King Evan, your vassal relative and ally, has sent you this letter in order to cause the death of this youth, whom I saw you embrace a short while ago. The letter says that what he did to the king was too shameful to be told, and as you hold his honor dear, he has every confidence that you have been to shame. I am in a dreadful dilemma. If I fail to grant my most faithful ally's request, then I will be the most dishonorable man in the world. But if I kill the youth for him, I will be guilty of terrible crime. I greeted the youth formally, with a kiss. I can't go back on that. That is the kiss of peace.
I cannot undo it or discard it without bringing terrible dishonor upon myself.
The king then summoned 3 counts to tell them the news.
Lords, what should I do? On the basis of the obligation I feel towards King Evan, and the kiss I gave the youth in good faith, I want you to decide which course of action is better or has less chance of going wrong.
Sire, be so kind as to hear us out, but you shouldn't bring dishonor upon yourself or any man alive.
Sire, you cannot harm this messenger while he is fulfilling his mission, and given the fact that you kissed the youth, even if he had been sent as a thief, caught, and properly sentenced, you could not have killed him.
Sire, you should love your friend King Evan, but hey, just follow me.
If I have a good friend, I owe him honor, and he owes me the same. But if that friend asks something of me that would damage my reputation, that should be the end of our friendship.
In my heart of hearts, I believe the king is too wise to be capable of such presumption. In fact, sire, I would swear to it that he never sent such a letter.
Sire, now send a messenger to King Evan and tell him that you don't recommend he lose his life or limb over this.
Also, enclose with it the letter that the youth brought you, sire, and let him know in your letter that he has damaged your reputation.
The king entrusted these letters to the most dependable youth in the household, and he didn't stop until he reached England and gave them directly to King Evan.
Bring me the chancellor! That's the way it goes. How often men suffer for the misdeeds and sins of others, while those responsible for the mischief remain safe and sound.
Do you recognize this letter?
Beloved sire, as God is my witness, I've never set eyes on this letter before.
Do you deny that the other day I asked you to write me a letter? You delivered it in my own hands and I gave it at once to Silence.
Sire, that's true.
Well, if you wrote that letter, which you gave to me and I to him, then you wrote this letter! No one had the chance to tamper with it after I gave it to the youth.
The chancellor then remembered that the queen had held his letter.
Mercy, dear sweet sire, may God preserve me from evil. I've remembered something, but I am so afraid of you.
Speak up! Out with it.
Sire, the queen came to see me. I've not the faintest idea why or for what purpose, but she came and stood very close to me, sire, and picked up my letter. She folded it and returned it to me tightly fastened, and I sealed it right away. I can't prove anything one way or the other. I don't know if she had it out for the boy, but I think she's played a terrible trick on me. That's the God's honest truth, sire.
The king knew very well that the queen had written this false letter out of hatred, and if suspicion should fall back on the lady, he knew he'd bear the blame. He had no use for the sort of vengeance that might reflect badly on him.
The king then prepared a message that was a major improvement over the last one.
It said that a deceitful wicked count had switched the letters because he hated the boy and wanted him killed.
Now, Silence could join the French court.
The king wanted him in his household because he was so noble, honorable, courageous, valiant, kind.
His peers were nothing compared to him. The praise he won put theirs to shame. He was already so famous that no one talked of anyone else except this boy.
When Silence was 17 and a half, exactly at Pentecost.
Whether it was a good thing or not, he was dubbed knight in Paris.
In the tilting field between the two rows, Silence excelled at hitting the target. There never was a woman less reluctant to engage in armed combat.
Whoever saw him jousting, stripped of his mantle,
Shield on his left arm, charging in the tournament with well-positioned lance.
might say that nurture can do a great deal to overcome nature if she can teach such behavior to a soft and tender woman.
Many a knight unhorsed by Silence. Had he known the truth at the time, she had knocked him down.
Would have been terribly ashamed that a tender,
Soft, faint-hearted woman who has only the clothing, bearing, and complexion that belong to a man.
could have struck him down with her lance.
Silence had no regrets about his upbringing. In fact, he loved it. He was a noble and valiant knight. No king or count was ever better.
Then it so happened that a fierce war broke out in England. Hostile and dastardly men rebelled against the king.
Listen, my sweet, I have a favor to ask of you.
Whatever you want, it's yours.
If I tell you, can I still have it?
Absolutely, dear sir.
I can't ask for more. Now, please don't be upset, my lovely Euphine, sweet sister mine. I want to have Silence back with me. I have heard that of all of the knights in France, he's the most skillful with shield and lance. And you must be aware of the fact that we need him quite badly.
The queen then found out that her letter hadn't hurt the youth a bit.
She was so distressed to learn that he was safe and sound.
Yet his prowess and the flattering things people were saying about him made the queen fall a little bit in love with him again.
This kind of love is very bitter. This love is bitterness itself.
A curse on the queen's behavior. A deceitful woman never loves. She only deceives to feed her lust.
There is much that could be said on the subject of woman's deceitfulness.
Sire, you mustn't think I bear any sort of grudge against Silence, especially if you have need of him. If I could wish him here, I would, sire.
The king then had a message prepared, sealed, and delivered to the king in France.
Silence left at once, taking 30 of his companions with him, crossed the sea, arrived in England, and made his way to the war at Chester.
The next day, a little before it began to grow light, King Evan ordered his men to arm themselves.
For he wanted to attack the Count of Connaught who had wronged and betrayed him.
The entire army was mounted.
Then there were terrible blasts of horns and trumpets.
And the royal troops didn't stop until they reached the enemies.
Fearlessly daring.
Eager to attack.
Driven by the urge to close and fight.
Each army rushed upon the other.
Everyone was first.
Or last, the strike! For everyone struck at the same time!
We never heard such a clash of weapons.
You could see shattered fragments fly, and many young men of battle frenzy with shields pierced and perforated.
They struck each other so hard with their lances that shields were as much use as straw.
Nor did the sharp edge of the lance's blade spare the spilling of entrails.
And when the lances were gone, they drew their naked swords.
The hand-to-hand combat was so violent that even the bravest were afraid.
The royal troops were seriously weakened.
They were under savage attack.
King Evan was furiously eager for combat.
So was the wicked count.
As quickly as the horses could carry them,
They rushed upon each other.
They struck each other with lances and sent the splinters flying.
The king was unseated and fell to the ground.
Count fell upon the king's man like a wolf among sheep.
His smashes befuddled many knights and busted through many helmets.
Their blood and brains were spattered all over.
If the king didn't get out soon, he would be captured right then and there.
Silence was on the other side of the fray, mowing down the foe with his Frenchmen. They rained blows ceaselessly, inflicting terrible wounds.
The night was thus, the king was surrounded.
Hurrah for the youth of Cornwall! Things were going badly for the count.
It's filled with hatred for Silence.
He simply couldn't manage to like him or the
He
French.
didn't quite know who they were, but he certainly disliked them.
They went at each other fiercely with sharp and perfect sword blades.
The count was in a
And
frenzy.
Silence was resisting with all of his strength.
they struck each other so savagely that their shields shivered to pieces.
Dear God, you who have rescued me from many a peril, let me prevail against this foe. Nature has made me weak, but you've strengthened me.
Just then the count damaged Silence's helmet so badly that he knocked gems and ornaments off of it.
You don't kill someone with a sharp sword. It would have been a pity.
Then Silence struck him with his steel blade, severing his right arm.
The sword flew from the severed fist. The count fell.
Once the enemy knew their leader had been taken by Silence, they turned tail and fled.
Ignominiously.
Silence didn't feel like fooling around, and he didn't want to stop fighting. He kept slicing off enemy legs and feet and fists.
God is on Silence's side. For as you can plainly see, he had won the war! Hurrah for the youth of Cornwall! Silence! Silence! Silence!
When the queen heard the news,
She flew into such a rage she nearly lost her senses. The queen was obsessed with thoughts of Silence. She could not wait to find out whether he would agree to be her lover or choose his own destruction.
Silence was darling of the court and favored of the king.
when the army returned from Chester to Winchester, the elders of the country came forth to admire Silence and honor him.
When a man is feeling most secure,
That is when misfortune strikes.
Frequently, it's a punishment for sin.
but Silence had never committed, nor would he, if he lived to be 1,000, commit the sins that the lady wanted him to.
Merciful, patient God, may you now be mindful of Silence, because he's defenseless in this situation.
Do you remember, friend, the love we used to share?
Lady, that love was the same as being hated.
Friend, why dwell so much on past grievances? We've both changed now. We are older and wiser. We were adversaries then. Don't worry about that now.
But I am worried. I won't ever be your lover. I've given my heart to somebody else. You will never have it, no way, never, so help me God.
Do you really believe I would talk to you this way seriously? I'd rather have God strike me dead than listen to another word from you. I'd rather be burnt to a crisp. But what pleasure you could give me. Alas, where is my lord?
Ladies, the king has gone to hunt waterfowl.
Why is he always hunting?
Toward evening, the king returned.
He came to this whorish lady and found the wicked slut aroused, inflamed with lust.
Sweetheart, how are you?
Good sir, you obviously don't care what happens to me. Silence may have won the war for you, but he's asking too much for his services. Think of your honor, sire, and mine. He doesn't give me a minute's peace. He just now came to me and...
Oh! What? Oh, God!
Now I can see very well that I was wrong and you were right. How can I get revenge without getting caught?
There is a way to do it so that you won't lose face.
How?
Do you remember the tale of King Vortigern, who once wanted a tower built, but whatever was built by day collapsed during the night?
I remember. No one can make the tower stand but Merlin, who was only a child at the time.
He made the king's tower stand, but afterwards, he said that he would go off into the woods and live like a wild man, and that he could never be captured except by a woman's trick. Dear, sweet lord, tell Silence to capture Merlin and bring him back to you as prisoner in order to interpret a vision. He will search 1,000 years and never capture him.
The next day, he had Silence summoned.
Friend, I do not deny that you have been of great service to me. Now I appeal to your generous nature and ask you to help me out of some serious trouble.
Sire, there isn't anything on earth I wouldn't do for you.
So be it. When my wife and I were asleep, I had a dream that frightened me. If you can manage to capture Merlin, he will tell me what that dream meant.
Sire, how can I capture Merlin? For many years no one has come near him or even knows where he lives.
Find a way! Otherwise, no one will accept you as retainer as long as my kingdom endures on this earth.
Silence hadn't a moment's reprieve. He went to his room, gathered his things, mounted his horse, and went off, alone.
Pensive and sad, weeping bitterly and praying frequently to God to ease his burden. And to help him capture Merlin. And to let him be avenged on the lady who persecuted him. For no reason.
And yet, not quite half a year later, as he rode alone in the far wastes, a man with long white hair flowing down his back came to a grove and greeted him courteously.
May he who makes the sun shine protect you from all harm, and may you succeed in your undertaking with the help of God.
Good sir, these are courteous words. May God reward you for them.
Friend, what harsh necessity drives you forth into this wasteland?
Since the time of old Aemon, I don't think there was a man who's born so tormented for no reason.
Tell me what it is that you're seeking, and if I can help in any way, then I will.
Upon my soul, the king has sent me out to seek Merlin, because he hates me and he wants to banish me from the land. Do not return, he said to me, until you have captured Merlin, and I swear by the 2 eyes I have in my head, I don't know if he's man or beast, and no one knows what has become of him.
Friend, cease your lamentation. Don't worry about anything. You will surely capture Merlin. He is a man all covered in hair, as hairy as a bear. He is as fleet as a woodland deer. Herbs and roots are his food, for he eats no meat. If you want to capture Merlin, do as I tell you. Take the wine, honey, and milk in these 3 containers, and good fresh meat that's heavily salted. And this is what you shall do next. Then be ready to make your move.
Silence went about his preparations.
May God bring them to fruition.
He roasted the salted meat, and the smoke soon spread throughout the woods.
And Merlin, who was nearby, smelled the meat and was on his way.
Ah, this looks good.
He didn't
stopped to ask whether it was raw or cooked, fresh or salted. He dove into it eagerly with bare hands.
Now all he wanted was something to drink.
He saw the honey, put the jar to his lips, and drank it.
The more he drank, the thirstier he got.
Merlin was nearly dying in agony. He saw the milk and drank it then.
If you ever saw how his belly expanded, inflated, and dilated, he would have burst out laughing.
Then he saw the wine and drank it in giant gulps and fell into a drunken stupor.
Friend, who are you and why are you doing this to me?
I am called Silence, and I left home in order to track you down. Silence forced Lord Merlin to get underway.
Merlin isn't exactly worried, for he knows how these things will turn out.
The king heard that Silence and Merlin were on their way, and he was furious with Merlin.
He said he'd never be taken except by a woman's trick.
On a hillside above the city, the king, queen, and 700 people came and met Merlin and Silence.
Merlin is a fool! Fool!
Merlin saw a peasant approach
Carrying a brand new pair of shoes with nicely new mended leather.
and began to laugh heartily.
Why is he laughing?
They came to an abbey and Merlin saw
A leper shaking his rattle and begging for alms in the name of God.
Merlin burst out laughing at this.
Why do you laugh at the poor?
But he refused to say.
They almost died of rage.
They were so mad!
in that same place there was a cemetery next to a church. Merlin saw
a priest chanting at the burial service.
And a man was weeping and crying over a little body.
Again, Merlin burst out laughing at this.
That man just lost his child!
What a monster you are!
How could you laugh at such a thing?
they told all this to the king and implored him to make Merlin explain.
Merlin! Tell me why you're laughing right here and now, or I will have you executed.
Then Merlin began to laugh again, right in front of the king, to show he didn't care.
Tell me why you're laughing. I'm not kidding.
Merlin laughed at himself then, but said nothing to the king!
Then he began to look at Silence, and even if they had burned him alive, he couldn't have stopped laughing.
Beat him until he stops laughing. No, wait. Beat him until he tells me why he's laughing. No, just beat him.
One shook him,
Another knocked him down.
and they all jumped on Merlin!
There was a nun in the queen's entourage who began to jibe at Merlin.
Oh, what a rascal! Making false prophecies like that!
Merlin looked at her and laughed.
What's so funny about a nun?
Oh my, what a vessel! What a phony! And what a hero we have here! My, what an act of chivalry, bringing such a great magician to court! What an old wine bibber! You have covered yourself with disgrace!
You are wrong, my lady queen. I did as the king commanded, and at tremendous hardship. And now you reward me thus. But the good Lord who created all things, sees and knows the truth.
Silence, you talk too much. You had better keep your mouth shut.
Merlin laughed so hard at the queen he nearly died.
Either you shall speak, sir fool, or I will cut your head off.
Oh, sire, I have no wish to incur your wrath by telling what I know.
You won't, my friend, I swear it.
Then I'll tell you why I was laughing. As I was entering the city, I came across a peasant who was carrying a pair of new shoes. He had them made brand new, but he would never have any use for them because the peasant died before he even reached home.
The king sent someone to look into the matter and found it was exactly as Merlin had said.
Tell me truly, why did you laugh at the abbey?
I was laughing at the paupers begging for alms in the name of God because they were asking for so little when there was so much within their grasp.
What?
Under their feet was a treasure, huge quantities of gold and silver, just beneath the surface.
The king sent someone to look for the treasure. The one who searched for it found it with ease, and did with it what the king commanded.
Come on.
Merlin, now I like you a little better because you're telling the truth. I still dislike you, on the other hand, for you said you could never be taken or captured except by a woman. I'm still a little disheartened by your lying, for your prophecy has turned out to be false.
Don't fret. It's always darkest before dawn.
Merlin, you saw a body being buried at the cemetery.
Why did you burst out laughing at this?
A priest was chanting for the dead, and a man was weeping bitterly there. But the man should have been happy.
Why?
Because the child was the priest, who should have by all means have been weeping, while the man whose wife had the child ought to have been thanking God.
Merlin, you certainly know how to speak ill of women. My lord shouldn't tolerate it. We should have you killed or thrown into some foul place.
Silence! Woman! Am I not king? You will kindly allow me to speak and act. A woman's role is to keep silent. So help me God! There is 1 in 1,000 women who would earn more praise by keeping silent than by speaking. Let me handle this. Merlin, tell me why you laughed at me, at yourself, and then at silence. Tell me also about the veiled nun. And I want to know the real reason you laughed at the queen.
Sire, I laughed at the 5 of us because there hasn't been one that hasn't deceived one of the others. But I give you fair warning, King. The share in the deception is not equal for all parties concerned.
The atmosphere became increasingly tense.
I cannot find words to tell you what dreadful suspicions were aroused in everyone.
How have we deceived one another? You swore to tell the truth. Who is dishonored?
My king, the queen has dishonored you. These two, Silence and the nun, are the deceivers. You and I are the deceived. This nun is Eupheme's lover. He's deceiving you in women's dress. Silence tricked me by dressing as a young man. In truth, he is a girl beneath his clothes. Silence is wise and valiant, good Sir King. So help me God. I don't know any man, however strong, who could have beaten him in combat. A woman, a tender little thing, knows she can dishonor you and does. And it was a woman who captured me. Is there any question why I'm laughing when they set a snare for us so much as 20,000 men couldn't?
The king almost wished for death. He had never felt such anguish.
His men had heard everything.
And could not even whisper a word.
They cared only for the king's honor.
The lady's wickedness knew no bounds.
She was malicious, arrogant, and perfidious. She'd always been cruel and dishonest.
She had promised little and given less.
She was vile and depraved! Silence. You have been a very valiant, courageous, and worthy knight. Neither count nor king ever fathered better. Now, by the faith you owe God and myself to tell why you have conducted yourself in this manner.
Sire, since I could not inherit,
Because of the count, and the twin maidens, and the 2 dead counts.
my father asked me to live as a man. But when the queen fell in love with me, I couldn't reveal my true nature. Do with me what you will.
Silence. Your loyalty is far above that of my royalty. There is no more precious gem, nor greatest treasure than a virtuous woman. You have saved yourself by your loyal actions. I give you my friendship and protection. And so you will never have cause for complaint. Women shall be allowed to inherit again.
Sworn witnessed!
A noble gift, and may God reward you for it. It is by his acts that one knows who is truly king.
The king despised Eupheme. He had no wish to spare her.
Nor did anyone ask him to.
In accordance with royal decree,
The nun was executed.
And the queen was drawn and quartered.
thus was the king's justice accomplished.
The queen was caught in the trap she had set for Silence.
For he who plots to harm others only seeks his own undoing.
No one was sorry for Eupheme.
They dressed Silence as a woman and called her Silentia.
And nature spent the next 3 days refinishing Silence's entire body.
Removing every trace of anything that being a man had left there.
She removed all traces of sunburn.
Rose and Lily were once again joined in conjugal harmony on her face.
Then the king took her to wife.
What?
That's what it said in the book where she found the story.
Huzzah!
Then Cador, Silence's father, and Eupheme, her mother, came to court.
They were overjoyed, as was only fitting.
Master Heldris says here and now
That one should praise a good woman.
More than one should blame a bad one.
And I'll tell you why. Because doing the right thing comes unnaturally to her. And
If we have blamed Eupheme today, woman should not take offense. For if we have censored you theme, we've praised silence more. I want to bring my story to a close.
God's blessing on the narrator.
God's blessing on the author.
And as for those, male and female, who listen to it, may Jesus grant them their dearest wish.